Hi, I'm Carrie Coon, and you're listening to In Her Words.
Everyone has a story. Welcome to In Her Words, a podcast from women in entertainment where female creatives and allies share their stories in their own words.
This is a dedicated space centered on how to harness creativity for inspiring and impactful projects in the ever-changing landscape of entertainment.
I'm Renee Rossi.
I'm Gretchen McCourt.
And this is In Her Words.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to In Her Words. We are beyond excited to speak with Carrie Coon today. As we are all watching the season 3 finale of White Lotus, we got to sit down with Carrie and hear about this amazing part, as well as her roles in the Gilded Age and on stage and her many films. She is passionate and lovely, and it was such a pleasure getting this opportunity. We hope you enjoy the episode. Well, Carrie, thank you so much. I am trying really hard to not talk about episode 6.
Okay.
Because I normally wait and watch on Monday as a little treat for myself. I was telling Renee I watched it last night, and oh my God, I'm not talking about it today.
Oh, wait, do you mean, 7 aired last night?
I mean, 7,
so
sorry, 7.
Oh, yeah, no, I just wanted to
what
make
are we
sure.
on? 7, yes.
Yeah, we're on 7. Next week is the finale.
Yes, next week. So I watched 7 last night. That's what I usually wait and watch it today as a treat. Watched 7 last night, and oh my God, girl, you are...
I forgot to warn my brothers.
You think?
I forgot to warn my brothers. Their wives were all like, turn around, close your eyes.
You need to call Gretchen and warn her next time.
Oh, dear. I'm glad my grandparents are dead. I say with love.
Oh my God, it is so much fun. So we are thrilled. We are thrilled to have you. We
so excited.
Yeah, we love your work. We're so, I mean, how fortuitous that we're talking about this in the middle of White Lotus season 3. So exciting. But we want to talk about all of the roles that you choose and how interesting, what you choose, how you choose your roles. I mean, I think we first started talking to your team with his 3 daughters.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, during award season and in the fall and how interesting that role was. So let's kind of take it back to, to how you decided that you wanted to, become an actress and what you have brothers, what your family, do you have a creative family, and just kind of how the journey started for you?
Okay, all the way back. I was born in 1981. So I grew up in the Midwest in a small town in Ohio called Copley. It's outside of an urban area, but my parents had 5 acres, non-working farm. In fact, a property that had been in my father's family in the 1800s, which they didn't find out until after they bought it.
Oh my gosh.
So I actually have photographs of our property at the turn of the century.
Oh, that sounds so idyllic
Very
right now.
cool.
I love that.
Yeah, really cool. So 5 acres, we were outside all the time. I had 4 siblings. There were not many kids in the neighborhood. I had one best friend named Erica Soleil. My sister and I shared her. So that's where my 3-lady dynamic comes from.
I love that.
The best friend going back and forth. And, my family is in some ways stereotypical in that my mom was a nurse in the emergency room. My father, though he almost became a Catholic priest, took over our family business, which was an auto parts store. I know it's a longer story, but so he was a small business owner essentially with his dad. And some of my siblings went to college and some of them didn't. One of them is adopted from El Salvador, and she also happens to be a veteran. So we just have this kind of we're an interesting cross-section, very stereotypical American family in the Midwest. That being said, my parents worked a lot because they had 5 kids, and they did not have time to take me to the live theater growing up. However, my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, who fought in the Battle of the Bulge in World War II, his father ran a movie house.
Oh my gosh.
And so he ran the projector. And when he went to World War II, he was drafted to run the theater. It was actually the live theater. They thought that his draft card, his little punch card, meant that he ran a live theater. But in fact, it was a movie theater he was talking about. So he met Bob Hope and, all the entertainers coming through. And he was responsible for curating sort of entertainment for the troops in Arles, France, where he was. And when he came back from the war, he did a couple of plays at our local community theater called the Weather Vane. And when I was 10, my good friend Laura Goomis took me to see Babes in Toyland at the Akron Civic Theater. And for the first time, I saw kids my age on stage.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, whoa, what are those kids doing up there? And I really wanted to try it. I felt it inside of me, right? There was something that awoke inside of me when I saw these kids. And I went home and I found our community newspaper and I saw a little call for general auditions for the Weather Vane Community Theater, which my grandfather had spoken of.
Okay.
And I said, Mom, can I go do these auditions? And she was like, no, you can't. No, because she didn't drive us anywhere because she slept during the day and worked at night.
Okay.
She worked nights.
Okay.
And she worked weekends. So she didn't have time. And I babysat my little brothers with my sister every weekend. So I didn't really do anything about it till senior year in high school. I was waiting for soccer practice to start. I auditioned for the lead in the play and I got it. I played Emily in Our Town my senior year. And then that was a one-off. I go to college on an athletic and academic scholarship to the University of Mount Union in Alliance, Ohio. I didn't go far. They gave me financial aid. That's why I went there. And they had a really small theater program and I took a few classes. I was an English lit and Spanish lit major. I studied abroad in Spain. I played 2 sports. I did plays. I did all the things. I changed majors 8 times. And when I got to my senior year, I still didn't know what I wanted to be. And I was doing my thesis in language acquisition. I was going to study language acquisition. Apparently, like so many young women who get engaged with like Saussure and the binary. I didn't realize what a cliche I was at the time. I thought it was very, interesting. And, but my theater professor said, I think you could go to school for acting. And I said, really? So I went to the URTA auditions, which are the university/resident theater auditions. That year they were held at the Palmer House in Chicago. My mom and my aunts and my grandma all came and got wasted on martinis in the lobby while I auditioned. No idea what I was doing. Kids were like stretching and warming up their voices. I had no idea what the hell was going on. I was waitlisted at Rutgers. And I finally, in the summer, after thinking it was moot, I got an offer to be one of 10 actors at the University of Wisconsin in Madison for a new program they were starting up. They were revamping their acting program. And so it was going to be, like you say, 10 actors for 3 years. And I said to my parents, should I go to acting school? And they were like, why not? So because my parents always believed, I think, ultimately that we should do something we loved. And I don't know that they did that, right? Mm-hmm. They did the thing that they had to do. And I had the chance to do the thing that I loved. And so I went off to Wisconsin for 3 years. I, had my identity crises and all these relationships and fought through some of my impulse control disorder and did all the things. And then I ended up at American Players Theater in Spring Green, Wisconsin. I did 4 years there. It's a brilliant place. People should go. It's still open. An 1,100 seat outdoor amphitheater, as well as a gorgeous indoor space they built. And from there, I got an agent that was Chicago based. I worked with directors that were Chicago based. So very naturally, I moved to Chicago. I started auditioning for commercials. I was so terrible. I had no idea what I was doing. It took me several years. And finally, I started booking commercials and I was doing theater. And ultimately, I got a lead role at the Steppenwolf Theater in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, my first main stage role. And that play went to Broadway.
It's so amazing.
Could have been anybody. It happened to be me. I married Tracy Letts and I went to Broadway. And when I was on Broadway, I met with casting directors in New York. I was cast the summer of the Tony Awards. We were nominated for Tonys. I was cast in The Leftovers and I shot the pilot. And then a month later, I was cast in Gone Girl off of the tape I made in my living room. And I went off to shoot Gone Girl. And then I came back and shot the rest of The Leftovers. And here I am.
It's such an amazing story of your first.
It is a whirlwind. I tried to condense it for you. I hope that was fast enough.
It's amazing how.
Thank you.
And all of it happening right at once. We always hear that there's no such thing as an overnight success. And I know there was so much added before that, but that part right there was crazy.
Part was fast.
Yeah.
It was the kind of the year I turned 30. I met my husband and everything kind of fell into place. My life fell into place, which I tell women all the time, in particular, like the 30s, like your 20s are a mess. Yeah. Your late 20s are in some ways the most painful time, right? You're learning.
It's the time to experiment. Yeah. It's the time to go out there, figure out who you are, find your voice,
no, or just learn that you don't have a voice, that you haven't found your voice, and that you don't have to say no to anything, and that you're gonna have to figure it out.
Right.
I couldn't wait to turn 30. I could not wait to turn 30. Like my 30th birthday, I was just like, this is amazing. I can't wait to hit my 30s hard. Yes. Now the 40s.
Little scared.
They're great too. They're great too.
Well, it's a little bit more. It's different. It's a different adulting. Yeah. But 30s, like my 30th birthday, I was so excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell people all that. It's like not to be afraid of that.
It is. There's
and my 40s. It's gotten better and better because you just don't care.
Yeah.
You don't care.
The comfort level just keeps increasing as the decades increase. That's the best part.
I am happy to hear that.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
It's interesting because my husband is turning 60 this year, which is we're in very different places in our lives in many ways. And that's a really fascinating and reflective decade, I think. And he's a man. So I think it's also a little bit different when you walking into that age. But
right.
but I kind of see what's coming.
So all of these things that happen, the theater, the TV, the film, and that have happened subsequently, and I have to do a shout out because Hannah, who's on our admin, she's a Badger.
Yeah.
And yes, so we are on Wisconsin in this house, and my son's a Badger. Yeah, we love it. So
fantastic.
Yeah,
congratulations.
said we had to shout out to Wisconsin. But between theater, TV, film, and your career has continued, moving between that. Do you have a favorite? Do you have kind of what you're loving to see yourself in?
Well, what I like that I get to do different things. I think one of the thrilling things about being an actor is the invitation into new subjects, right? New realms of living that you didn't explore in your life. And so it's for people who don't know what they want to be. It's a great profession. But in that regard, I mean, one of the things I love about the theater is that, you get to explore, you get to do rehearsals, right? You get to try new things. You are telling a story with your whole body all the time. Your body in space always signifies. And so it requires always refinement, economy, right? It reinforces some of those skills that then serve me when I am doing TV and film. But most importantly, you tell a story in order. And that is the thing I miss most of all when I'm doing TV and film. Now, I will say that one of the pleasures of doing His Three Daughters, and one of the reasons I was so excited to do that film, is because Ozza committed to telling the story in order. And so we shot it in 17 days.
Oh my gosh.
And so the thing we lived through the day before is the thing we were dealing with the following day. And it is so instructive. You just learn so much in that process. And so it enriched the film. And it's kind of a miracle anything else is ever good, because we're always shooting out of order and shooting from multiple episodes. So the theater is definitely a touchstone for me. And it's such a rare privilege to get to shoot in order in any other form.
Oh, that's really interesting. I don't think I've ever heard anyone put it that way. That the characters in His Three Daughters were so complex and so lovely. And then coming in, and obviously with White Lotus, everyone's talking about the threes in White Lotus, from the beginning. Was that something that was conscious as you were looking at these characters and choosing yes as how that dynamic worked between all of the women?
In some ways, I feel like the projects choose me. We don't have a lot of say in what we are offered. I still have to fight for film roles. And so it was so lovely when Ozza came to me. And of course, Tracy, my husband, had worked with Ozza twice already, and he's a dear friend. And so I was just thrilled to get the opportunity to enjoy his way as a filmmaker. And I loved the script, of course. But I don't know what happens in the universe that some of those things coalesce, but I will say that it was interesting to me. It must have been a lesson I needed in my life, because I believe that thematically there is a shared preoccupation, which is with Katie. She's very emotionally immature, and she does not have the capacity to see the person who's right in front of her. In fact, she is just relating to her own assumptions about that person, her own history with that person. Obviously, those sisters have a lot of history. The ladies in White Lotus have a shared history that starts when they're very young. And in some ways, it's the same problem. And what they're all forced to do, to reckon with in both of these pieces of work, is the idea that if we drop our illusions about other people or ourselves, can we survive? Can our relationship survive? What is the sort of blow to the ego? And in fact, can you transcend the blow to the ego that you experience when you are forced to reckon with the truth? And I think that good art serves up those lessons. It's the same lesson in Virginia Woolf.
Yeah.
If George and Martha let go of their illusion, can the marriage survive? And in some ways, I think Ozza and Mike White are asking a really similar question, because these questions of identity are we have time to reckon with them now, because we're not just surviving. Sadly, I think we'll be going back to survival shortly. So enjoy your time reckoning with your identity. It will end probably sometime in the 2030s. But sorry, that's very dark. We don't have to go there yet.
It is very interesting how we can, and I think this is sort of a tribute to these projects that we're talking about, is we can sit and just kind of mindlessly enjoy them for an hour or so, but they come back. They're with us and they come back. And I can't, and I think I've told so many people that, have watched White Lotus all the way through. This season, I feel like, is the most enjoyable as I'm watching it, because it's soap opera and fun and crazy, but you think about it all week and talk about it all week. And I don't know if that's, if that's Mike White, it's all of these things. It's all of these things. Like you said, it doesn't hit you over the head with a message while you're doing it, but it's there.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
And that is, I think that's really different.
Yeah, I think Mike is really good at that. And I think in some ways, these questions he's asking about death, existentialism, identity, ego, spirituality, they've always been threads in his work. And if you go back to Enlightened, the show he did with Laura Dern for HBO, which was 2 seasons, it's really similar territory. And I love that show. And I'm so grateful that I get to be in the death, identity, ego, Buddhism season of White Lotus. I think that's where I belong, because it's something I'm personally very interested in.
What has it been like working with Mike? Because I feel like most of his projects, as you're saying, because it's like Beatrice comes to dinner, you know, that one, like even watching that movie, like I think I ended up crying at the end of that movie. Like, I was on a plane watching it. And I was like, oh my God.
Right.
You
always cry on the plane.
It's
such a
always
safe
the plane
space.
ones. Such a safe space, but but it's so interesting because I think, one of the things that you were talking about is just understanding identity, and the characters that you play. How has it been working with him in terms of developing your character? And what does that look like in terms of the depth? I know you've come out in some recent interviews around some additional storylines, but I'm curious to know just in terms of how you've really soul searched in terms of your character.
Well, Mike leads with compassion, first and foremost. His central concern on set is that everyone's views are being respected, and it's reflected in his writing. He's not afraid to write about all different kinds of people because he's not afraid to have a conversation with anyone. Mike White does not shy away from subjects that are taboo, transgressive, political, because he's interested in the way human beings arrive at those views. He's interested in the entrenchment of identity and what our obsession with who we are and how we look is doing to us. And I find that that's he's fundamentally, what that means is he's a curious person. And our greatest art comes from people who are curious. And he has what is amazing about working with Mike on any character is that you believe that Mike White could walk on set and play the character better than you're playing it.
Oh, interesting.
And so that you're in good hands because he has investigated each person psychologically to great depth. And there doesn't seem to be any barrier about gender or politics, right? He has traversed that territory on his own in order to make them feel very replete. Now, of course, he gives the actors license to fill in the blanks. He understands it's a collaborative art form. He's doing it because he likes the collaboration, because he appreciates when the actors, he finds the thing that's fundamental to the character, and that's who he casts. And then he's not afraid to lean into those qualities he's responding to on set. So he is at once very precise in his writing, but he's not precious about his writing.
Oh, interesting.
And so he's willing to edit and make cuts to story for the sake of making the story as compelling as he can make it. I mean, obviously, as an artist, we know he doesn't shy away from these things. He would never make a decision about story that's political. If he's making a decision to cut a storyline, it's about the storytelling and only the storytelling. It's that that something is not investigated to his satisfaction. It's not having the conversation he wants to have. And the fact of the matter of this season is that there are more characters, and that there's more story we have to wrap up by this last episode. And in some ways, that it's very hard to find the balance when you're juggling all of these characters. But each of the, they're all exploring different facets of this question of spirituality and identity. And I think, it's an invitation for anyone who's watching. They're going to find their way into the story in some way. And that's what makes his art so resonant in the cultural conversation, because there are so many entry points. And it's also challenging. No matter where you're coming in from, you're going to run up against something that's personal to you. And I think that's what good art does. And we didn't talk very much about Laurie, because for me anymore, the projects I choose are because everything I need is there on the page.
Yeah.
You learn, we say in the theater, like if it's not on the page, it's not on the stage. And that is absolutely true in TV and film as well. You could try to elevate it, But it's better to start off with a really solid script where all the information is there for you. And if you show up and say the lines, you're going to be most of the way there. You can do as much investigation outside of that as you want. Everybody has their own process. I'm a mother of 2 young children, so I'm going to rely very heavily on good writing right now in my life.
Right. Did you know Michelle and Leslie before? And anybody? Had you worked with anyone that's crazy?
Never. No, only Scott Glenn. Scott Glenn and I had worked together in Leftovers. Not really. We didn't really have scenes together, but no, we had never met because, of course, in most projects, you're only going to have one woman of a certain age. You're not going to have 2. You're going to have 1, maybe 1.5.
Yeah.
Little supporting part. So the fact that all 3 of us in this decade of our lives get to work together is really rare.
Right. And Parker.
It's getting less rare on TV. And Parker as well.
There's having a lot of.
And Natasha and I are the same age.
Okay.
Having Natasha there.
Yeah.
So it's very unusual for us to get to work together, let alone live together and forge a new friendship together over 6 months in a foreign country.
I know, how beautiful was it? Oh my God. It is just so gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. Beautifully shot. Really, really challenging circumstances. The heat it's the hottest the region has ever been in the history of keeping track of temperature. Wow. So schools were closing. It was probably 115 to 118 degrees often, sometimes less than that with the humidity. That's how it felt. So for people like me trying to stay nice and pale for season 3 of The Gilded Age, I didn't go outside between 9 and 4. I didn't go to Cambodia. The UV index was so high. There was one day I missed 1 strip of skin putting on my sunscreen. I walked to get coffee 5 minutes away from my hotel. I walked back 5 minutes. This is 9 a.m. The burn on my neck still itches. I mean, I still have damage from that sunburn. That's how high the UV index was. So I don't mean this. It is beautiful. People should visit Thailand, but we cannot underestimate what is happening to our global surface temperatures. The ocean was like a hot bath. It was pretty swampy. You could see the coral dying. The coral was actually shut down while we were there because the big die-off was happening. There's not as much biodiversity. The monkeys are gone. I mean, that's all CGI. The monkeys don't live on those islands anymore. They've been pushed out because of development. So, one of the things Mike is interested in is also how that resort culture is fundamentally exploitative. These are rich people who are not paying attention to the havoc their travel is raking all over and all around them. So it is naturally beautiful. The Thai people are astonishing. I think living according to Buddhist principles does make for a certain level of just peace and quiet and calm. And the way they treat children, genuinely supportive of children, not lip service to supporting children like we do here. So there are beautiful things about starting every job with a blessing, with a ceremony that asks for everyone's goodwill. That's a lovely way to start a project. The country is being destroyed by climate change. The ocean is being destroyed. The temperature is not survivable, and it will cause global devastation. It already is. And so it was very painful to see that happening all around us.
Yeah,
it's awful.
Entertainment tourism is a really interesting topic. Historically, it has been such a positive, and that you see something in a movie, you see it, and it brings everyone to Italy, and it's so lovely. But these, just the avalanche of timing and the avalanche, it's really an interesting new topic, and it's really interesting with the, the American Expresses and the Visas and the MasterCards who are in that space, and now the work that they're doing to kind of level it out. We don't want these huge peaks and valleys. So that's a topic for another day, but it's a really interesting topic.
It is.
And
we can talk about that all day.
Yeah. And what is the responsibility of filmmakers and creatives of being, we love for the location to be a character itself, but there's a responsibility in that now. And
absolutely. And there's historically been a lot of waste in our industry, and we're working on it, but let's face it, we could all be doing more.
Yeah.
And the great lie of these movements is that it's up to the individual to do that work, when in fact, of course, it's corporate interests that are driving the worst. So people might lambaste us for flying across the world to do our jobs, but in fact, it's not our individual responsibility. It is a collective responsibility. It is a corporate responsibility. And when there are moneyed interests involved, it's much harder to get the traction we need to make the changes we need in our lifestyles, which, again, we'll be forced to make them,
Yeah.
and it's going to be very uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting
So I hate
topic.
to be so negative about it, but I can't speak to my experience in Thailand without speaking about my deep sadness about it.
But that's authentic.
Yeah, it is.
And we appreciate that.
Thanks.
Yep. So
in terms of the Gilded Age,
I was going to say the Gilded Age too.
I was just going to go.
I was going to
dive into the Gilded Age.
Yeah, I was going to the Gilded Age too.
The Gilded Age. Opulence. Let's talk about opulence.
Yes.
What was that experience been like?
Well, one of the things
because it's something completely different. I would estimate in terms of your experience.
Yeah, I mean, it still is in some ways satirizing very rich people, the richest people in history. Some of them, though, we're getting close to that sort of level of economic stratification. What was really startling about it was that they shot in Thailand for 7 months, but I shot for 6 months. I did not go to Bangkok to do the studio time there. They shot me out because I had to start work on the Gilded Age 48 hours after I landed. So the whiplash.
Jet lags. Let's talk about jet lag.
Jet lag. I was going to say,
there was no time for jet lag.
So you're not kidding about staying as pale as possible.
No. That's why I'm wearing, floppy hat, long sleeves, because we were there for 6 months, but we're only there for 6 days, But I had to be right on set. So they were very graciously, because I hadn't been around for costume fittings. They wrote all this. They had me do all my scenes in my bedroom my first week or 2 weeks. So I was in my pajamas mostly when I showed up on set. So they kind of eased me into the costumes, because it is a bit of a learning curve again when you smush yourself back in. So that was gracious, but I really I didn't know where I was or who I was or what I was doing. And I just said to everyone, and thankfully, that set is like a family, the actors, the crew, they've known each other for decades. It's the best crew in New York. And I just said, you guys, I know it's TV. I know it moves quickly. I just need some extra time. Like, I just need some extra takes. I need to take the time to figure out how
it's
I
to downshift into that. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was really intense. And I shot all through mid-January on that. And so I really haven't had a break. And my poor children, we've asked a lot of them this year. So I'm taking some time off. But that said, I think, we've kind of dispensed with all the exposition in the Gilded Age, and now it's just all plot and fun character stuff. We have some great guests coming to join us this season, really exciting additions to the family, and we have the best time. We have the best time.
Love period pieces.
What's that?
I love period pieces.
Yes, and the costumes are
incredible. The sets, there's just something so magnificent about it.
And it's really like palliative care right now, people. And the thing I love about it is that the Gilded Age also transcends political lines. I meet people from all walks of the political spectrum who watch it. It also is generational. I meet a lot of people who say, I watched this with my grandmother. Sons that watch it with their mothers. It's something that families
it's the
are
new Downton
sharing.
Abbey in some ways. And it's just but it crosses, but it's also the historical context of it is just so I'm fascinated. You get fascinated by these periods in history that you're not always taught, but you're able to put some sort of narrative and storytelling around it in such a beautiful way. It's, you almost want to you want to live in it for that hour, and things, so that's amazing.
Julian's so smart about the pieces he chooses to highlight, like electricity or the Statue of Liberty being sent over, or it's a lot of fun. It's always fun to see what he decides to highlight in a season.
Yeah.
And I love it.
So I'm looking forward to showing, season 3 will come out sometime, I think in the summer. And so we're looking forward to people getting back on board. And hopefully, who knows, if people watch it, maybe we'll get a season 4. Depends.
No, it's,
I
hope so too. It is. It's so, there are so many period pieces. And I wonder, things get in vogue, of course, and on a creative, but from consumers and from we're loving to see these. And I was thinking about when you said that about costumes, like you went from wearing the least clothing possible, like little bikinis and little tiny dresses, to like this much of your body showing in the Gilded Age. That had to have been like a shock to your. Where do you guys film Gilded Age?
We are all over. We have 2 studios. So my set is in Long Island.
Oh, okay.
Christine Baranski's house is in Queens.
Okay.
And then we shoot in Albany and Troy, because they have a lot of period buildings. And we took over the square in Troy, kind of made that department store, things like that. And then we also go to Newport and shoot in the mansions in Newport. We went twice this season. So we're kind of all over the place. We were on the road quite a bit this year.
Oh my gosh,
we love it. It's really fun to go to Newport, especially in the off season where we just sort of take over the town. And they're certainly so receptive and grateful. It's driven a lot of tourism. They have Gilded Age tours now, and pictures. I was on tour I went on a tour of one of the mansions, in my beanie and my winter coat, and only one person recognized me. So he was lovely. He was very knowledgeable. He took me around. I introduced me to his family. I had a lovely tour with this band. But it's great fun to be there. We really appreciate our time.
That's amazing.
In Newport.
With something like the Gilded Age, do you feel just because it's loosely sort of based on the Vanderbilts?
Yes.
So do you feel that that type of historical context in terms of bringing characters to life, or it's slightly different than doing something like White Lotus, right? In terms of the responsibility of the story.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it looks like in either case, the story responsibility does fall heavily on the writers, and certainly on the creators and showrunners. But yes, I mean, what I love about it is that I like to read about the Gilded Age while I'm making the show, because they were insane. I mean, the things they were doing with their money were absolutely bonkers. They didn't know what to do with all of the money they had. And it reminds you just how people are weird, and they had this audacity. And it's like, it's good to remember that it's not all just, this buttoned up sort of conservative, repressed. It's actually quite weird. They're weird people. Rich people are weird. And the richer you are, the stranger you are. And I just love remembering that while we're making it, like they're human beings with like, blood and desire. And it's very easy to get caught up in the sort of elevated Shakespearean language of it all, which is very much part of the show. It's not entirely realistic,
Yeah.
There's kind of a very narrow channel. You feel when you're too small and you feel when you're too big. And, we can have bad days too, but we always are trying to find ourselves in the pocket. So I just love remembering just how strange it was that to live through that period of time. It's a wacky time in history. And it's just fun to read about. So yes, I guess there is a different, but I just, Oliva's life, Oliva Vanderbilt, who Bertha sort of reflects a little bit, she's so interesting to read about. She's a fascinating human being, fascinating woman of her time. And just like that the choices Julian is making in the show are so rooted in what actually was occurring, that nothing's outside of the realm of possibility, even when he's bending the history a little bit. It's good to remind yourself of that.
Yeah.
And I can slouch in White Lotus. I can slouch and, and use my fork badly. I guess there's much have been made about the way I eat fruit on the White Lotus, but I direct people to the Gilded Age. See, I am capable of using silverware. Thank you. So I don't come by it. Honestly, I had to work hard.
It's not an easy job. Do you have, I know you're obviously, you mentioned your husband is a super famous writer and successful writer. Do you have plans for other pieces? Are you interested in being behind the camera? Are you writing, producing, directing? What other pieces are you looking at in the whole process?
I'm properly intimidated by how much I don't know, say, about camera or I was an English major. I did my fair share of writing. It was mostly bullshit. So I don't have anything really substantive to say. Maybe that will change, in my next decade. But for now, I feel like other people are saying things better than I ever could. So I'm happy to be the conduit for other people's language. My husband, and also, my husband has a Pulitzer Prize. So it's pretty intimidating, even though he's very encouraging. He thinks I'm a great writer. It's lovely to hear that, but I'm not quite ready. I love being his first reader. We have a small production company. We have a couple of properties in development, very few. It's very small. A television show we're working on. There's a script he's adapting, but also Tracy's looking to direct his first film. We haven't actually announced that yet, but so I won't give it away. But he's looking to get into directing, and I will be, of course, producing, and I'll probably be in that film as well.
Oh my gosh!
So
we're
going to be working together. Yeah,
that's amazing.
We work really well together. We don't get in each other's way. We've primarily worked together in the theater. I've been in his plays. This will be the first time we're doing something on camera. First time he's directing on camera. But my husband knows so much about cinema. He knows so much about movies. And I just feel that I'm excited to see what he's able to bring to that conversation. And, we're going to get a great DP and really supportive people around him. And he's just going to take a whack at it. I'm really excited. But I'm not there yet. I'm going to do some light producing.
Okay.
Class president. That's my role for now.
Do you want to go back to theater at some point?
Of course, I'm always trying. But, there's been a real commodification of theater in this country. There isn't a lot of support for the arts. There's less now than there's ever been. We see what's happening to the Kennedy Center, a bipartisan organization that is now falling apart. So it's really devastating. And the theater hasn't really recovered from the pandemic. I mean, theaters all over the country are really struggling. the business model in a country that's fundamentally not supportive of the arts is very challenging, especially as we are having a hard time getting young people into the theater. We're trying. We have to make it more accessible, right? It has to be art for the people. But it's hard. And so for that reason, you need really big stars in New York in particular to get a show up and running. And I've not just been a big enough star to do that. So hopefully that changes. Hopefully I have the chance in the next year or two. There are certainly projects we're behind the scenes trying to get to New York or get off the ground in New York. My husband, of course, is working on a new musical with James Taylor. That was just announced, which is exciting in our house because we love James. I grew up certainly listening to him. Even if the kids don't know who he is, we all do. And so that's exciting. But yes, very eager to get back to the theater. I've not really taken more than 2 or 3 years away. And now this is kind of the longest I've ever been away from it. And it's a very important touchstone for me. And it's hard. It's harder. It's also a much harder schedule, weirdly, with children. Now, aside from the fact that I didn't take my kids to Thailand because of the heat. And so that was very hard for our family. But you know, in the theater, if you're doing it in the United States, you're doing 8 shows a week, and that means you're working all weekend. And if you live outside of the city, which I do, it becomes very, very hard to balance being the mother of young children and doing theater.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question with, there used to be that like having a TV show was the best thing to be as a parent because you were, going in traditional, but now that, these series are filming, differently for streamers and films. And then like you mentioned theater, is there kind of a sweet spot that, that you're looking for?
If there is, I haven't found it. Because the reality is you're absolutely right. They want us to make television shows that look like film in a lot less time. And that means that typically we will always work 12 hours if you're shooting in the UK, if you're shooting in maybe, I think Italy, it's a 10-hour day, which is very humane. In the United States, it's very common to work a 16-hour day. My crew in the last week of worked 2 18-hour days in a row. Wow. And their pay has not increased commensurate with what they're doing. So what we're seeing is what we're seeing in every industry. Workers are being squeezed in the interest of the corporations. So that's happening in our business as well. So since the strike, actors' wages have been driven down, and that means everybody below the line, their wages are being driven down as well. And we're being asked to work these really, really long hours on salary, right? We're not getting, overtime pay or sick days, right? We have insurance days, of course, but like you show up if you have dysentery. That's this has always been. That's probably not healthy. The young people might help us change that, but it's kind of just the way we've always operated. So, if you're working 5 16-hour days, you do not see your children because I leave my house at 3 a.m. and I get home after they go to bed. So no, it's not great. But at least when I'm doing TV, I have the weekends typically with them. Or I can take them to Newport. But you start to, your kids have their own lives and it's unfair to take them away just so you can see them. So it's very, very hard. It's very hard to find that balance as a mom. Tracy obviously has his own career. When I got back from Thailand, he left and went to New Zealand because that's where things are shooting. He went to Spain to shoot something. Almost very few things are actually shooting in Los Angeles or New York. We are choosing cheap labor over American labor. So you're seeing things shoot in Hungary, which I find really problematic politically, but that's where the industry is moving. And so it's a really thorny time. So the next TV show I get, who knows where it will shoot. That makes choosing work really hard. You might have something really amazing that you'd like to do, but the cost is just too great.
Yeah, we're hearing that a lot. Hard. The international scheduling and locations versus US. We're hearing that a lot right now.
It's very common right now,
especially out of LA.
LA has been decimated. I mean, there's just nothing happening in LA. Very, very hard time there right now.
So what, we know you need a break and that you deserve. So we're winding down White Lotus from a viewing perspective and then Gilded Age is coming. Is there something that we're going to see that you've already finished or what's next? What's next for you and for us as viewers?
I think everything I've made is coming out. Usually it's nice to have something in your back pocket, but, this is the end of my back pocket this summer. So my husband's made a lot of stuff since I came home. That'll be coming out. Okay. And honestly, there have been a couple of things since I've come home that I really wanted to do. And apropos of our conversation, I couldn't say yes. Okay. Because I promised my kids I would stay home for a while. I promised them I wouldn't work for a little while. And we just couldn't make it work. I also have, our family is in from Singapore. They're staying with us for 4 weeks. And I had a couple of jobs that would have taken me away for their entire visit. Not fair. Right. And so I've had, there's always an opportunity cost. It's never perfect, this decision making. And also making space for Tracy, as he's taken on a lot of opportunities this year. It's kind of his turn because I was away so much of the year.
Right.
And so I've been really just taking my time. Because of the way the industry is right now, you don't know what the sure things are. So the things that come across my desk that have money aren't necessarily the right next step for me. Some of the things that come across my desk aren't financed. And so we're waiting to see if they could go. But it's an interesting time for me to attach to something. Certainly the White Lotus is getting a lot of attention. Gilded Age will be on the air. So it's a good chance for me to maybe get something with, give something legs that doesn't have money yet. Maybe somebody be interested in financing a project I really love. So I'm just kind of being very patient. I think that's the only right I've earned, is to be patient and to say no. So, though, I still have to fight for those opportunities I really love in film, but so that's what I'm doing, staying home. And, what those decisions, when you make them, they hurt for a day. And then, like all things, you kind of move on with
and
your
then
life.
they're the right decision.
And you recognize it's somebody else's, right? It's an opportunity that belongs to somebody else. And they're probably the right man for the job. And everybody kind of ends up where they're supposed to be. That's the way I choose to look at it.
So Carrie, in your spare time, you choose so many complex roles. What do you watch and what do you read?
Oh, good question. Oh gosh, what am I reading right now?
Like, do you click off, or do you go even deeper?
Well, my husband, perhaps you've heard, is now called the king of physical media. We have a really insane DVD collection, Blu-ray collection, over 10,000 Blu-rays with a projector in my basement. So every night, my husband and I go down to the basement. Almost every night, we go in the basement. My husband puts on a movie, and I never know what it's going to be. And when it's Academy season, I know I love it. It's a decision.
So jealous.
I would love somebody to make decisions for me.
Oh my gosh, isn't it delightful? Some people think it's some sort of weird paternalistic thing. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I make so many
decision off of your plate
completely, and it's a surprise in a world where I don't get many surprises. And he's so thoughtful about his curation. He cares about it so much.
Yes.
These decisions, it takes him so long sometimes to make a decision about what we're going to see.
It's almost the most romantic thing I've heard in like the longest time. I'm like, oh my God.
Romantic. I love it, you know? And during Academy season, we watch the Academy movies. We're very responsible voters. But then after that, it becomes this free-for-all. We get to watch whatever we want. And so, of course, last night we watched White Lotus, and then I went to bed. But sometimes he makes me watch a TV show and a movie. So I'm not getting enough sleep, but it's in service of my marriage.
I love it.
We've been watching a lot of Romare lately. He's been putting on a lot of action and horror just to keep me awake because I've been very tired. I went to Tokyo, for a day last week. That's kind of what my life is like. So
we'll scare you to stay awake.
Movie. That's right. He does that, or something you don't have to think too hard about. Like he's not going to put on a 3-hour Turkish movie, which I love, but I will definitely fall asleep. So that's how I spend my time, which means that leaves me very few minutes at the night to read my book. Right now, I'm reading the Copenhagen trilogy.
Oh,
okay. Which is sort of this is a woman who's been, I don't know if she's been rediscovered. Sometimes I just pull the trigger on something, even if I know very little about it. But it's a memoir essentially. I think it's fictional. But it's like, there are all these Norwegian men. I'm also reading Septology, right? Which is the new sort of Norwegian Finnegan's Wake. So I'm reading that.
Okay.
Yep.
But I found that it's very hard for me to read for 5 minutes at night without falling asleep because it requires some concentration. And so that's kind of my daytime reading or my airplane reading. And then the Copenhagen trilogy I've been reading at night. I also was reading I'm also reading the Frederick Douglass biography.
Oh, isn't that good?
Okay.
It's
so good. Yes.
It's so fascinating.
My daughter had to read it for school and I read it and I was like, it is so good.
Really, it was such an interesting book. I'm enjoying it so much. And of course, it's always, I find myself in challenging times in my nation's history, returning to history and biography as a way to sort of reflect on what's happening now. So that's been really fun to read. I often will oscillate between fiction and nonfiction. And if I'm in between, I'll pop into the New Yorker or the Atlantic, or I'll read read a short story collection. I just started the collected works of Lydia Davis, like it's my palate cleanser in between. So I've been doing some of those short stories. I read a lot. My worst fear is to be caught somewhere without my book.
Right. Okay, I'm curious if you guys watched everything for the awards. What were your favorites, and did they win? Now that we're past it, you can tell us.
Yes, right. I really did love The Brutalist. I thought it was, considering the budget for that film, so many big swings and such stunning cinematography.
What a story that we didn't know.
Yeah, really interesting. And I thought Guy Pearce was excellent. I thought Alessandro Nivola stole the scenes he was in. You know, Adrian Brody was great. He was just great. And so I really loved that piece. And I thought the score was just magnificent. It's something I never listened to scores, and I've listened to that score just in my life. We actually loved, my favorite sort of feminist film of the season was a foreign film called The Devil's Bath, which nobody saw because it didn't make the cut in the voting.
Putting that on the list.
Yeah, me too.
But it's this fascinating team of filmmakers. It's an aunt and her nephew, and they direct together, and they've done a couple of like thriller horror pieces. This is about, I think it takes place in, I want to say it's 15th century Germany. No, sorry, 16th century, 1500s in Germany, I think, like Alsace region. And it's about the fact that women's lives were so punishing, so hard, but they were also so religious, right? Christianity had started to be mapped onto pagan ritual. So you kind of see that mapping happening in this film, which I've always found really interesting. The way that Christianity took, maternal religion sort of kind of used their mapped Christianity onto those rituals, pagan rituals, and co-opted them. So you see, women have now become Christianized, and so they have these notions of heaven and hell. And there's a prohibition against suicide. So even though their lives are painful and awful and unsurvivable, and they're being beaten and they're pregnant all the time, and they will not kill themselves because they're going to go to hell for eternity. So what they did instead, and this is true, is they would choose an innocent, a baby, a young child, and they would kill them, murder them, knowing that the state would offer them confession and forgiveness and then put them to death. So they could avoid going to hell for committing suicide. Now that sounds very macabre, but it's beautifully shot. Wow. And the woman who's the lead is this pop star. It's her first acting role, and she's so charismatic. And everything about it, like the costumes, and it's just so lived in. And it's the questions it's asking about, again, work-life balance are shockingly present, even though it's so dark. And it's really well made.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Nobody saw it.
Yeah.
So I've been championing that film, Devil's Bath, really interesting, historical, fiction, based on some real cases that occurred at the time. What else did I really love? I'm trying to think of what else I liked Kneecap a lot. That was about the Irish rappers, rapping in, their sort of native tongue. That interesting resistance.
The foreign films this year were very good.
They were. Yeah. They always are.
Yeah, it's hard to get them out there to get people to see them, but they really were.
It's
really
true.
Were.
Yeah. And we choose to be foreign film voters so that we get to and have to watch them. And so when somebody like Yuri Borislav shows up in Anora, we're like, we've seen him. We've seen him for years. Yeah. He's so good.
Yeah.
You've seen him do a two-hander in Chechnya or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly because I have a terrible memory for titles. But you love seeing those people come back. Yeah. Because like Sandra Uller, right? Everyone's like, who is Sandra Uller? It's like, Sandra Uller is one of the greatest actresses of all time. And if you didn't see Toni Erdmann, or you've never seen a Maren Ade film, you are really missing out.
I love Toni Erdmann. So good.
Funny. I mean, that scene, the birthday with her naked at the door, it's just so hilarious. She's hilarious. She's such a great actor.
So good.
Yeah, really amazing. And so I was happy to see everybody discovering her last year. But we love the foreign films. We really do.
Carrie, thank you so much. We have talked. We want to be respectful of your time. Oh my gosh!
Oh, thank you.
We've gone so far over,
right.
but we have loved you. So excited to have you as a guest. Everyone is loving White Lotus, loving the Gilded Age, his 3 daughters. I mean, we could go on and on. But thank you for this time.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I like getting all the ladies in a room.
Yes,
talk about real stuff.
Yes,
let's keep doing
it.
Thank you for listening to In Her Words. We hope you'll join us at womenandentertainment.com and go to our Substack for extended interviews and behind-the-scenes access.